This is the M1 iPad Air, a $600 tablet that is more powerful than a PS4. Well, at least that is true on paper. In this video, we are going to see just how good iPad gaming is by testing a whole bunch of games. First, let's discuss the same games that I tested last year on the M1 iPad Pro to see how they compare. Call of Duty Mobile was a notable favorite that I did enjoy playing, but it's important to remember that although the M1 iPad Air is as powerful as the M1 iPad Pro, it does only have a 60Hz display versus the 120Hz ProMotion available on the Pro models. So in theory, we should expect gameplay to feel much less smooth on the iPad Air due to the lower refresh rates. However, regardless of this screen difference, from my testing, I kind of felt no different when playing Call of Duty Mobile. Even when you do play this game at 120 FPS, it does still feel a little clunky even when playing with a controller. And I think that's just the nature of how this mobile game is built. It doesn't feel like the Call of Duty we know and love from the Xbox and PlayStation. The 60Hz on the iPad Air felt fine for me and had zero impact on my performance in the games. For clarification, on COD Mobile, I do play exclusively inside of ranked lobbies, which is where you play against real people and not against AI bots. Last year, I discussed how the extra power of the M1 and the larger display on the iPad Pro definitely gave me an unfair advantage in these lobbies I was matched in. But this was met by a bunch of comments saying that I was playing against AI and it had nothing to do with the iPad enhancing my gameplay experience. And I agree that this would be true if I was playing a quick match, but I'm not. I'm inside of a ranked lobby and it's a completely different matchmaking system. With a game like COD Mobile, you definitely see the benefits of the M1 processor. The power of the M1 allows you to crank up all of the graphics settings without any stress. You don't have to sacrifice visual quality for higher FPS to get better and smoother gameplay. If you then compare this gameplay experience to somebody who you may play against, they're probably playing on an older smartphone from like 3 or 4 years ago. So of course you're going to dominate with an M1 desktop processor in your tablet, regardless of if they're real people or you're playing against AI. Next up, we have got Minecraft. This has been one of the most popular games on mobile for so many years. And I must admit, I have not played Minecraft since probably 2013. Jumping into a modern version, a whole lot has changed. I was really impressed with the super easy multiplayer system, letting me join different game worlds and game modes, such as Battle Royale and Time Trials. I was completely overwhelmed by all of the different choices that I had. For reference, when I used to play Minecraft multiplayer, it was literally just me and 4 other friends building some pointless village inside of a private lobby. But now on your iPad, you can join thousands and thousands of people in a single lobby to do crazy stuff. I even made a friend in one of the Battle Royale modes, but I was too much of a noob in our first battle, and he accidentally got caught in the crossfire of my trigger spamming, and he betrayed me moments later. A pretty brutal punishment for a simple mistake. There are a ton of settings that you can customize on Minecraft, including various control options. Beyond just touch, you can use a controller, and there is even mouse and keyboard support. But inside the video settings, you can adjust the render distance. The recommended is 12 chunks, which the M1 handles perfectly fine. I tried bumping this up to 22 chunks, which currently is the maximum available on the iPad Air. I personally felt like this could have been a lot higher. We have a desktop processor inside of this iPad, and 22 chunks did not seem to phase this iPad Air 5 1-bit. Next up, I want to take a look at Alien Isolation. Now, this game has been ported directly from the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC versions. This is not like a mobile version of Alien Isolation like you get with like FIFA, like a mobile version of that. This is an actual full console game. Now, in my opinion, Alien Isolation is probably one of the best games from the previous console generation. I absolutely love this game, and I think it was kind of underrated in terms of how clever it was with how the alien actually learned how you played the game. And now the entire thing is available to play just on your iPad. Like, I mean the complete story with the cutscenes, the same controllers, all the same game mechanics. Nothing has been sacrificed in this version on your iPad, and it runs incredibly well. It doesn't just run at like a reduced texture version. This is the equivalent to how I used to play it on my PC, like full max settings, and sort of 60 FPS. It feels very smooth. Full controller support, full mouse and keyboard support, and it's just mind-blowing that we can now play games of this complexity just on your tablets. Now, if you want more console games like Alien Isolation, cloud gaming is a good solution on your iPad. Last year, Google Stadia was my go-to choice. However, since then, we have seen the development of Xbox Cloud Gaming. And because I'm an Xbox Game Pass subscriber, I get this included with my monthly subscription. For me personally, I think Google Stadia Pro's game selection is rather weak. Compared to last year, Google Stadia looks like it's going backwards. Like literally, what happened to Jedi Fallen Order? This was available on your monthly subscription, and now we just have a bunch of terrible games. Hitman is the only game that interests me on Google Stadia, and even that version is like ancient. It's Hitman 1, it's Season 1, and we're now on Hitman Season 3. Unless you're willing to buy individual games from the Stadia store, I would probably stream my games elsewhere. So here we are inside of GTA San Andreas, the remastered version that came out recently, the definitive collection, and I'm playing this on Xbox Game Cloud, and I've got my Xbox controller connected to the iPad Air. Now, latency isn't too bad. When you're playing simple games, like when I play Cricket 2022 or like something like FIFA, the latency is perfectly fine. You can actually play those games pretty accurately. But what I've noticed is with Xbox sort of Game Cloud, and it's definitely not as good as Google Stadia in this regard, whenever you play a more complicated game, like something like, you know, GTA here, like an open free world game, or Forza Horizon, which is a multiplayer free roam game, the Xbox Cloud streaming, it really struggles in regard to latency. The image quality is significantly reduced, as you can see within this screen capture here. It's quite pixelated and quite a low bit rate. So it's a usable experience. But for the internet connection I have, sort of like a super fast fiber optic here in the UK, it still isn't quite quick enough to handle these free roam games. And definitely Google Stadia handles the free roam games better. Like I've even played Destiny 2 on Google Stadia, which is free roam multiplayer game, on the M1 iPad Pro last year, and I actually could play it with a bit of like noticeable latency, but it wasn't like what you're seeing here where I'm like moving the thumbstick and the whole game is literally breaking down in front of me. Another problem if you intend to do a lot of gaming on this iPad is the lack of internal storage. If you are purchasing the M1 iPad Air, I highly recommend avoiding the 64GB version. As you can see here, I have completely maxed out my storage capacity, and a bulk of that is from the large apps, which are all of the video games. And if you actually take a look at the games I have installed, this is all of them. The rest of the apps are just things like YouTube and Netflix that take up hardly any space. So for gamers, the 256GB version is a must buy. As I expected, gaming on the M1 iPad Air is almost the same as the M1 iPad Pro. Even with it missing ProMotion, gameplay at 60 FPS is still pretty smooth. If you want to see how the M1 iPad Pro compares to the M1 iPad Air for gaming, you have to watch this video next.